Tommy Blight woke up that morning in his bed wishing he didn't have a sister anymore. At 11 years old, Tommy Blight hated his little sister Evelyn, who was 2 years his junior. Ever since she was born, he ceased to be the baby. There was the family portrait he also despised in the living room with his sister's wide smile that everyone said was so sweet, making no mention of him. There was a house that was said to be haunted on Mefokin Hill, just 2 blocks from where the Blights lived. The house had been abandoned and condemned for nearly 10 years' time, but it was never torn down or ever approached by any outsiders. Tommy's mother had once explained to her son about the house, and how the woman who once owned it had been cheated out of her inheritance by a family member who was called in to help and assist her. Shortly after these rumors began circulating, both her and the man suddenly disappeared, leaving nothing but the house behind. "Goodwill is committing a kind act for another without expecting anything in return, Tommy," his mother was apt to say. "Doing something nice for someone for benefit of any kind is not goodwill. Rather, it is making an investment in that individual. And it is something I always want you to be aware of in this world." Tommy, as most young boys are, was quick to dismiss these statements, not caring for adults since it seemed they were the ones who never knew what was going on in the world. Perhaps such a statement is not so unfounded, as there was a separate story told about the happenings of this house by the local children that has since passed into town legend. The house was said by the school children to be haunted by a witch who could grant wishes. But the wishes granted by this witch never gave one what they really wanted, only what one thought they wanted, because of the foolishness that existed inside themselves. Tommy, of course, didn't believe in any of these superstitions, let alone could he even consider that a house might actually be haunted. It was October, and Halloween was approaching, however, and so Tommy thought of a scheme for his sister. He would take his sister there at night and give her a scare all right, which would give him a good laugh or two. Despite Evelyn not wanting to go, since she still did believe in haunted houses and spells and curses of witchcraft, she was eventually swayed by her older brother's insistence, saying how she'd never grow up if she still let herself be scared by such childish stories. And though Tommy was not of the nicest sort, it is true to say that the hauntings we have in our heads are true hauntings. People can spook themselves or put themselves under curses and hexes and hauntings simply by how they take in certain truths. As they approached the house with its broken beams and rusted gate, which creaked as they crossed, a wind swept up both their sides, sighing with a high screech as if it were the air of some screaming animal. The wind would not cease, and neither of the two children could tell if they had rushed inside to escape it, or if the wind had pushed them into this dilapidated place. The house was all but empty. All the doors had been unbolted and hung open, with nothing to show behind them but empty space. There was but one door that was not left open. It was a black door in the far back with a skeleton key stuck inside the lock, having a diamond-shaped knob handle. The door shook, ever so slightly, as if something were behind it. Tommy looked to see his sister shivering, which put a brief smile on his face. Probably a trapped animal behind that door, Tommy thought, hoping the creature would jump out towards his sister for a scare. This should give her a good spook. Before Evelyn could speak, Tommy rushed and turned the key. Suddenly, they and the entire room were washed in whiteness. All that could be seen was the silhouette of what appeared to be an old woman swaying in a rocking chair, calling towards the children with her claw-like fingers. At that, Evelyn was pulled forward into the blinding white abyss, past where Tommy stood. Once she was sucked inside, the door slammed shut. The key disintegrated, and the door disappeared. Tommy scrambled as quickly as he could once gaining his senses and screamed for help, heading towards his home, washed out by the violent wind. When he met his mother, she was shocked to see his out-of-breath state and the ghastly stare about her baby boy. "Now what on earth is it?" she exclaimed. "Evelyn and I went up to that haunted house," he stammered, still out of breath and clearly shaken from the experience. Before he could explain anything that happened, however, his mother interrupted him, scolding him about heading towards the house. "Didn't your father and I always tell you to stay away from that house?" she said. "It's condemned and not at all safe to go exploring it." "But Evelyn," Tommy sighed. She... "Who is Evelyn?" asked Tommy's mother. "Is she a school friend of yours?" Tommy's face went white. Before he could respond to his mother, he looked towards the family portrait that hung in the living room. Evelyn, whose wide and bright smile could once be seen on it, was nowhere to be found on any place of the portrait. Evelyn was completely absent. It was only him and his mother and father that he saw on that gilded frame. Seeing her son stare towards his picture, Tommy's mother spoke. "Oh, that picture," she said, changing the subject. "People always comment on it, and the nicest smile of my only baby boy." Tommy said no more, and walked back to his bedroom upstairs. That night, beneath his bed sheets and the light of the moon, he wished how he'd had a sister.